thanks for bearing with us as we figured out some technical issues. But so just a little bit about the young professionals in case this is your first event. We are a group of young professionals. If you consider yourself young in your career or age-wise you are young, we do a lot of events centered around social networking, community involvement, and then professional development. And so this evening is one of our professional development events. We're going to have a panel of 3 speakers. And so I'm going to kick it off with our first speaker, Katie Jacobson. She's just going to give a little bit of an intro into her work life, and then we're going to talk about some personal goal setting with her. So Katie, here you are, and welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so room people, hang on. We got to see if Zoom people, I switched to my headphone. Can you hear me? I'm going to assume it's yes until you tell me it's a no. Oh, thank you. Okay. People in the room, what's your preference? Mask on, mask off? Okay, you good with the mask off then? I have a face. Okay, cool. Well, hi everyone. It's nice to, I usually say virtually meet you, but now I have to say like actually meet you. So virtually meet you all and actually meet you all. If I have not yet had the privilege to meet you, I'm Katie. I have been with young professionals pre-pandemic, and now we're back post-pandemic. Well, post is a little strong. Towards the end of the pandemic. So I was very flattered when they asked me to help speak on goal setting. I will do my best to help you. I think there's nothing worse, especially since we have the luxury of being together. If you have questions, please speak up, because it's not rude. You won't get the Zoom interruption thing. So like, please speak up, people, digitally. If you have questions, please say something. Otherwise, we can just run with it. People on the Zoom, is my earring cracking into the mic? I'll just take it off, but I'm gonna look like a pirate, so it'll be fine. Do you want to pull up my, cool. So talking about goal setting, I had to kind of laugh when I was supposed to be talking about goal settings for 2 reasons. Like one, do you mind if I'm here? One is like, LOL, goal setting in a pandemic. That's hilarious, because I just think that most of the goals that we've been asked to make have all gotten blown up to some degree, largely because of variables that we can't control. But I actually think that because those have happened, it's disrupted, at least for me, it's disrupted the way I think about goal planning and the way I think about really deciphering what is my actual goal versus maybe what is the facade of the goal that I'm talking about. So when I laughed a little bit, you can kind of flip forward on this too, Lana, but when I laughed about being asked to do this is because I had not quantified myself as a goal setter necessarily. I looked through it and was like, well, actually, that's not true. I definitely am a goal setter, but I've been known to bullshit my way through some goals, because I think that sometimes we use goals as a group bonding technique. And sometimes you don't have my permission to know that about me. Personally, I think that goals are really important because they are a reflection of who I am. And for me, the most important thing about me is my reputation. And it's important for me that my actions match my words. Therefore, if I'm being kind of forced to present a goal to the group, I'm like, well, shit. Now I need to like have a goal that I know I'm actually going to achieve, as opposed to like maybe having a real one. So I've spent some of my career publicly lying about what my goals are, while privately knowing what my actual goals are that I hadn't necessarily given anybody else permission to give me feedback on. And I do think also in the world of the pandemic, where the only way to interact with other people was to announce to the world what you were doing, I think that sometimes that can get a little bit hard when setting some goals. So, oh, that's a lot on my face. So this is me. When I did laugh though when I was doing goal thing, because I was like, oh my God, I actually am a really good goal getter. Like, that is me. There are certain things that have been so far removed in my world just because of time. I didn't even give myself credit for, like, that was a huge goal and I got it. So like, one thing that's really important to me is education. I graduated college. Not everybody can say that they've done that. Probably most people in this room, digital or physical, are in the same boat, but that you had to do a ton of work in order to tackle that. And like, it was really important to me to hit the ground running on my career. So I have 10 letters after my name. I knocked out a ton of education specific to my industry really early. And I got a lot of feedback that was an out of order goal, that I wasn't supposed to do that at that time. But that's why it wasn't a public goal. Not everybody knew that was what I was working on because I didn't give them permission to have an opinion. There are other things too, like as I've gotten older, I always wanted to have a place to call my own. I always wanted a dog. For those of you who might be friends with me on social media, I am a new proud owner of a mini Aussie Doodle who is the cutest little thing in the wild world. She makes her frequent appearances on my LinkedIn, so I'm trying to brighten the days. But there are also a lot of things that are in progress. And for me, I'm a macro thinker. I started my career as a project manager at Epic, and that's the way I think. I'm quite type A. And so I really like to think about what is my overarching goal, and then how can I reverse engineer my way into it? Because at least if I kind of do these things out of order and rearrange them in the process, I know that I'm working towards whatever the big thing is. So like career-wise, technically speaking, I am a board certified financial advisor. So I help people to project manage their money. I help them to think through like, okay, how can I tackle, whether it literally be goals or just I want to get better at my money, or I just don't want to worry about my money. I'm really good at that one. But that's nice. I'm really good at that. But that to me is not, that's not my career. I want my career to solve a problem. And for me, a population who's really important to me is medicine. So it's really important that my career helps to augment solving the physician burnout problem by controlling a variable that I can impact. I can help them manage student loans, and I can help them to figure out contract negotiations and things like that. So kind of rearranging some of my thought processes actually was able to give me a direction in a rather large career. Other things though, I'm a terrible cook. I don't think that's a fair statement because I don't cook. So I'm bad at feeding myself. I got an Instapot for the holidays because I wanted to get better at feeding myself, but it's still in its plastic wrap. So stay tuned on whether or not I get better at it. But like I have these goals in progress that I think are really human of us. It would be great if I slept 8 hours a night or I drank more water or whatever. And then there are also trade-offs, right? Like I worked really hard in my 20s to build a really solid foundation professionally, but I've inadvertently changed the timeline on some other goals. I don't necessarily quantify like being a wife or being a mom as a goal, because I wouldn't just do those things to check a box, which sometimes I think goals can become. But I do think that there are some pros and cons that if one goal is going to take the forefront, a new goal might kind of slide behind. And that looks different for everybody. And again, that's partially why I think it's okay that some goals stay more private as opposed to public, because like that one for sure is not open for feedback unless I specifically invite you to give me feedback on something so personal. So I think goals just, they kind of wander. They kind of wander and they ebb and flow with your world. So for us in a pandemic, you can kind of fast forward by 2. The main thing I think we have to be able to do is we have to evolve. And I think the best analogy I found myself thinking of was this little dude when I saw him on the cute little clip art. But most people, I would imagine, when they think of like, what is the chameleon's goal? I would imagine most people's first thought was the chameleon's goal is to be the best at blending in with its background as possible. But I would actually argue that that's not the goal at all. The chameleon's goal is to stay alive. And the way the chameleon stays alive is by being really good at blending in with the background. But the thing that will never change is the fact that he's a chameleon. So he has to work with his skill set, which is camouflage, in order to achieve his actual goal. And I think a lot of times we get like a little stuck in that too, or we're just like, I want to look like really blend in with the really dark stuff and the really light stuff. Well, okay, cool. But like, did you still survive if you didn't blend in super well with the light stuff today, but you're still alive? Did you work towards your goal? I think a lot of goals are really progress driven, and that one is much more important. So another way that would show up for humans, then I hear a lot with especially young professionals who I work with, is, well, I want to buy a house. Is that the real goal? For a lot of people, yes, that's the true tangible goal. I want to buy a house. But sometimes that's the kind of how that's masquerading as the goal. The real thing is maybe I want to have a bigger job so that I can afford to have the house, but I don't want to tell anybody that I want to want to be paid more. Or I'd love to host people over at my house that I hopefully will have, and I'll be fit and healthy and have a cute little dog and whatever. But in reality, I need to like go to group fitness classes more often so I get some social interaction and move my body. There are lots of different components of maybe like your lease is up and I just don't want to make any more decisions, but I don't trust myself that I can make a good decision. So I don't know if I want to be in the house, dude. And so sometimes talking them through, that's where the balance of public versus private becomes a really personal conversation. Because at least when I bought my place, there's no way I would have been able to come to the right conclusion without the help of other people and determining. I mean, I think I turned off and on, God bless my little realtor, she's a gem. I think she turned off and on my algorithm like 4 different times where I was looking, no, I'm not. I'm looking, no, I'm not. I'm looking, no, I'm not. And I just think that's the reality, especially in a pandemic world of, I don't think I failed on that goal, but I think the goal changed and evolved as the world did. So tactically, how can like you guys infuse that into what you're looking for? I would say the main theme, you're good. The main theme is to find ways to pick out what are your priorities and really getting clarity on what your goal is. Is it a camouflage or are you trying to stay alive and figuring out which one that you're working towards? I also think it's important to be fair to yourself and to just pick a few. Some of these lists, these New Year's lists, oh my God, they're so cruel. It's just like not possible. There's no way I'm going to change that many things about myself. Pro tip, all of you are fabulous the way you are. I do think there's a little bit of toxicity around the hustle culture and around goals where it implies that what you have, what you are, what you do, what you've earned is not yet good enough. Inherently, I don't believe that's true. I think the healthy goals are the ones that help to propel you further to where you're trying to go without taking away of all the work that has gotten you where you are. And then I think that all comes down to the theme. So that on the day, if you're the chameleon, you're like, oh, I sucked at blending in with the dark colors today, but I'm also still alive. So I made progress on my goal and I practiced and I got better at the dark colors. And so it's not, I failed at my goal. I wasn't good at blending in with dark colors. No, I practiced and I'm still alive and I'm up for another shot. So the recipe, I know you guys have all Googled this. I know you've all seen it, but goals need to be actionable. They need to be measurable. They need to be specific. And then I really believe I'd add a 4th one. I think they need to be true. I can't tell if I'm in your way. I'm sorry if I am. With the measurable, how many miles do you want to run a day? How many hours do you want to sleep? For how long? All those types of concrete tools that you can answer yes or no. Did I do this? The specific helps you to make a decision. I want to be healthier. Cool. Good luck. Not good enough. I want to be healthier by sleeping 8 hours, 4 nights a week. That one you realistically would be able to say yes or no, did I get healthier? Actionable, oh, you guys, working in the money world, this is a winner. So statistically, the way that you succeed is by leveraging systems. So you only have to make a decision once when you implement the system, and then everything else is autopilot. Best example of this is why does everybody fund their 401k? Because you made one decision. Am I going to fund my 401k? And then you forgot about it. And so the more that we can build systems that help you to achieve that same scenario in your goal, you're good. And the reason why I put true is because I think the way you identify what that system is going to look like is by leaning into how you're naturally wired and what your natural strengths are. So for instance, I do this a lot with my people when figuring out money. If your goal is to save $1,000 a month, well, if seeing $1,000 a month would leave your bank account would give you heart palpitations, but seeing $250 a week move is no big deal. Well, sweet. Build the system so that you're moving $250 a week instead, even though everyone tells you that you need to do it money on a monthly basis. Who cares? You don't need to do the same thing as your neighbor. Everybody's strengths and weaknesses and systems are going to be different based on who they are. Again, that's where being a little bit more public about it can be helpful, because somebody else who might think like you might actually be able to give you a little pro tip shortcut to help you get around some of those pitfalls. But generally speaking, I think these 4 are the best way to engineer whatever you're working towards. So you're good. Most importantly, in the world of social media, if you are not familiar, Teddy Roosevelt, I'm a fan. I was trying to figure out who my favorite Roosevelt was, like FDR, Teddy, or Eleanor, and I think he's got to be up there. He founded the national park system, bless him. But I think this is infinite wisdom, especially in the world of social media. You get to control your narrative, and you get to control who has privilege to give you feedback on a particular part of your narrative. I really think that comparison can be something that is just so hard. Absolutely so hard. Some people they're just wired to achieve different things more quickly than others, and it might not be fair or input driven or whatever. But please know, by default, you're actually in a really good position. You can knock it again, because all of us in this room have already proven that we can tackle some massive goals. Obviously, we're on the other side of these, so we probably are like, oh, whatever. But when you were 15, I imagine everyone had a major stressor of wanting to get their license. They did everything in their power to practice and go to class and do all those other things. And now we're like, whatever, I've got my license. And then everybody, when I presume, at some point has left home and they've lived on their own. Like, that was scary. We had to learn how to feed ourselves, still working on it. And we had to learn how to like do laundry and keep ourselves safe. And like, that was a big deal. But now that we're on the other side of those goals, it's just kind of like that's part of my natural workflow. Graduating the school systems, graduating college, interviewing, getting a new job, all of those, like becoming employed is a big deal. So all of you are already naturally wired to achieve goals. And on the tough days, I think this is most important to remember, because if you do not believe that your goal will be achieved, I don't even think you should start. That's why I think the goal, when we're building it, it needs to be realistic. Like, I'm never going to be a size 0. That's just like not a realistic goal. My bone structure won't let me do that. So why would I even chase that goal? That doesn't make any sense. But it happens all the time. And I think that's why people get frustrated and feel like they're failing. So for you all, I think the celebrations in a year 3 of a pandemic are so important. Making sure we find reasons to do well and to succeed and to celebrate others. Progress, I think, is more important than perfection. I also think progress is more important than the outcome. I had something cute to say there, but it's gone. So we can just fast forward on that one as well. All in, the real core of this whole thing is knowing that whatever you pick, you can do this. I think, I remembered my thought. I think that the best example with celebrating is, if you think of the school year, schools were amazing at giving us structures by telling us, hey, this is your goal. Get from 1st grade to 2nd grade, figure it out. And they told you exactly what you needed to do it. Here are the classes you need to do, here are the grades you need to get, and here's the safety net, so that if you're not tracking, we're gonna help you and we're gonna pull you up. They also scheduled breaks that happened regardless of whether or not you were on track. They scheduled celebrations that happened regardless of whether or not you were on track. And they gave you friends regardless of whether or not you're on track. And I think it's really important to remember that as an adult, we get a lot of freedom, but with a lot of that freedom, a lot of those structures to help propel you forward naturally also don't exist. So by putting in those celebratory systems, whether they be multiple people or a routine or whatever, those things I think will help to take away some of the choice, because sometimes the path of least resistance of, nah, I'm not going to get up today to do that is just easier, especially when you can just work from home in your pajamas and watch Netflix when you're not busy. Like, I get it. Been there, done that. So all in, that's why I added this 5th one from the recipe. I think it's important that you are supported. You get to choose who your audience is, who's going to support you. It can be as broad as social media, and it can be as tiny as your roommate. It really can be whomever is important to you. And it wouldn't be a good deal without some secret tips and tricks. So you can hit it again. I think visual reminders are super helpful. Canva.com, I'm sure everyone is more familiar with this than me, but it allows you for free to be able to go in and you can make like a vision board or whatever. You can do it all digitally, and you can make it in the shape of your iPhone background or whatever phone background. Wallpaper, is that what they're called? Computer background, whatever. You get it. I think other visuals, if you're trying to make progress on something, every time you complete the task, you can literally move a marble into a jar and watch the jar grow. It's the concept of the swear jar, same kind of idea. But having those little check-ins are really important. I think the friends are fun. Friends are really fun. And it's just way more fun to celebrate when you kick ass and people are like, you kicked ass, way to go, proud of you. And you're like, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging all of my hard work paying off. I just think it's more fun. So that really kind of does it for me. Of course, if anyone has big financial goals, I would be happy to talk to you, shameless plug. But my topic was a little bit more broad. If anyone has any questions, I would be more than happy to field it. Elizabeth is going to help with honing in on more career things. And I know Mary's got some great stuff coming down the pipeline too. But thank you for listening to me. But what questions does anybody have on goal planning? Huge asterisk that I should have said in the beginning. These are all my opinions. This is not like fact. So it's totally okay if you disagree with me. But yeah, what's up? Yeah, that's a great question. So for those online, the question was, how do I handle when I get discouraged and a little knocked off course either because of the pandemic or because things aren't going my way? Well, I think there's a huge power in the support system. I literally just had this conversation 2 hours ago with my coach about trying to figure out how I wanted to rearrange some of my goals and my planning so that I would do it for me, so that I was motivated based on what had changed, because some variables in front of me that I can't control changed at work. And so I just have to learn to adapt with it. I also think it's really important to pick what's important to you and to be comfortable with releasing the rest as noise. And I think that sounds far easier than it actually is, because we do get a lot of passive feedback, I think, that is subliminal, that you should do something this way, you should be XYZ direction, whatever. Especially I noticed as I got closer to 30, I turned 30 in the fall, I noticed that it was much more obvious that there were these private mile markers that nobody talks about, but everybody is aware that there are, and they're like, would bring it up a lot more frequently, saying like, well, where's your date? Why is your date not here at the holidays? It's like, okay, we're having this conversation again. And I think that's where some of it is just practice, learning to be able to say like, I don't accept your feedback. You don't have my permission to give me feedback in some of those areas. And I think then it makes it even more important to celebrate when you did something that will get you towards where you're trying to go, especially if it took extra energy and effort to do it. I high five myself all the time. And I think that it's super dorky, but I have to celebrate me because my dog doesn't do it on my behalf. So I think that that's important. Did I answer that okay? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the chameleon analogy, we had somebody, for those online, we had someone walk in halfway through. My chameleon analogy was that I think a lot of times people chase the wrong goals. That I believe that a lot of people would say, what's the goal of the chameleon? They would answer, well, the chameleon is trying to blend in with the background as best as it can. And I would argue that that's not the chameleon's goal at all. The chameleon's goal is to stay alive. And the way the chameleon does that is by being really good at blending in the background. So on days when the chameleon I might have seen the chameleon if I was looking, so it didn't do a very good job, but it's still alive at the end of the day. I would say that that was a successful day for the chameleon, and the chameleon did make progress towards its goals. Whereas if it had only been focused on blending in the background, it might have said like, well, I broke the streak. I screwed it up. I wasn't good at this. And that, I think, is leaning into some of the psychology. I'm really wired. I don't do well with the stick. I do really well with the carrot. It's really important to me to feel like I'm making progress. So if I was the chameleon, I would have to focus on, but I'm still alive, in order to feel like I had done a good job and was chasing my goal. Does that make a little bit more sense? Okay, cool. Yeah, no, it's just colors. Anybody else in person? Hi, lovely. Yeah. Good question. No, I do not exclusively work. Oh, the question online was who my client base looks like. So I do not exclusively work with physicians or with people in medicine. I work with confident type A decision makers, if you can tell. A lot of them tend to have gotten continued education. So many of them are in engineering, software development, project management, tech, that type of world. So happy to connect with anybody if they would like to talk about it. But anyone online have any questions before I yield my time? Beauteous. All right. Thank you for hearing from me. I'm around if you have any others for offline. Yeah, no problem. Oh, yeah.
Hi, thanks for whoever came late. Feel free to grab a bite. There's some food right out here. And then obviously grab a drink as you please. Also, Katie, I'm sorry, I never even gave a thorough introduction. Katie's a financial planner at Northwestern Mutual, correct? Yeah. And so that's a bit more about her background, but thanks so much to speaking. Can I? Okay. Thanks so much to speaking. Just to some personal goal setting in 2022. Next up is Elizabeth, recruiter, and I think she can really speak, as you'll see on her handouts that pass around, to kind of what you can be doing with your resume this year, what you can be doing with your digital footprint. Is that how you worded it? Yes. And so please give a warm welcome to Elizabeth. Do you have your phone? Or do you need to hold this? Are you holding it? I had a headphone in, but you can hold it. Thank you. Yep. Need to pull up your sheet on here. Sure, can you? Yeah. Okay. We're gonna take a minute for technical updates for everyone at home. Document. Yeah, we just wanted the weather update for a minute. Yeah. It looks like it's gonna be warm on Thursday. Oh, and the weekend. Yeah. Oh, it is, but it's not a PDF. We're good to go. Okay. I think are a few people out getting some of these. Oh, I forgot. I'll wait about you guys. Sorry. I want to use my so bad. Okay. I'll wait. I'll wait. Okay. Yeah. I mean, before I get started and do my formal introduction of myself and my topic, I did want to kind of dovetail off of some of what Katie was saying, and then based on one of the questions back there. But I'm sure everyone here knows who Tom Brady is, right? And then, so I've learned, and you may know this, Tom Brady and Alcoholics Anonymous and the Army and the Navy and the military, the first thing they all do when they wake up in the morning is they make their bed. So Tom Brady does that. He's like, it's one of the biggest keys to his success. Same with Alcoholics Anonymous. If you go through treatment, you learn, have one small thing you do every morning. It sets the tone for the rest of the day, and you have feel a sense of accomplishment no matter what. And then they do that in the Army, military, naval, whatever. So it's a little thing, maybe everyone knows that, but I found it really interesting. I read Tom Brady's bio, and then, but anyway, so make your bed tomorrow, everyone. So my name's Elizabeth Laukka. I've been a recruiter for 22 years. My specialty is marketing communications and anything under that umbrella, PR, digital, media, project management, creative. I work with a lot of the large ad agencies and PR agencies in Minneapolis and in-house corporate marketing departments. It's my own business, but I started at Fallon and Call McBoy, two of the big agencies locally. That's where I learned the business. And my specialty really, I would say, is middle to senior level, not executive level and not junior, but like really middle to senior level. And, you know, my presentation is going to be a little more like fundamental. I think it's really simple, but I don't know where all of you are at with your careers, but most of you are in your 20s and 30s, right? It takes a long time for most people to find out what they love to do. But some people know right away. But when you're thinking about changing jobs or careers or next steps, always think about, what do I love to do? What am I good at? What do I love to do? And don't think about all the peripheral things like, what's the commute like? How much am I going to make? Is it a good cocktail party description? Who's to, you know, just think about, what do I love to do? What am I good at? And then, like, point number two, if you're great at what you do, everything else takes care of itself. And you will get promoted, you will be noticed. Minneapolis is a small enough town in the marketing industry. Everyone kind of knows who everyone is within 5 or 10 years. So if you're known to be good at what you do, you're passionate about it, you're conscientious, you care, people know, you know, they kind of know that. So do your job well. And my example is always like a barista at Starbucks. If you are great at making coffee and you do it quickly and you're really friendly with customers, people know that and recognize that. And even if your coffee shop around you is cool and it allows dogs and it's in the best location ever, whatever, if you're not great at your job, no one's gonna, you know, buy your coffee from you. And I think a lot of what I'm going to do, and later we can go on to your phones if you want and look up some great LinkedIn profiles or do that at home. But everything nowadays is about preparation. I would say 95% of all recruiters use LinkedIn. In-house hiring managers, outside recruiters, everyone looks at your LinkedIn profile. And I prepare your resume and have it be exactly the same as your LinkedIn profile, have it super robust, super fleshed out, have it just be awesome. And the LinkedIn examples that I put at the end, I just did a Tesla search, you know, because they're known to hire the best and the brightest. Not everyone at Tesla has a college education. Elon Musk, the founder, he's like, I want people that figure out problems, who have a great attitude, who care about what they're doing. That's all I care about. So if you look up a lot of the Tesla profiles, they're some of the best in the business. And you can just see the passion of the people, whether they're in engineering, marketing, HR, whatever it may be. And then, so spend a lot of time and effort on your profile. And I say reviewing your own social media and digital footprint. I mean a lot with LinkedIn, but depending on your career, like a lot of writers, copywriters, art directors, and you know, a lot of people have like additional supplements to add to your LinkedIn profile. And then I also say your digital footprint and social media. So technically, human resource departments and hiring managers, technically, there's not protocol where you're supposed to go do a social media search on a candidate, but the statistics are 75% of all managers do. And so I always say people will find out what's out there. And so a lot of people have passions and it's your brand, and feel free to, you know, be outspoken, but just keep everything professional, because I do see it on occasion where someone's not hired because the hiring manager sees something and is like, you know, doesn't show great judgment.
And a great, and can everyone hear me at home? I should have asked.
Yes,
okay. A great resume and LinkedIn profile showcase who you are. So let's say you're in a job you don't love, but you want to like switch or evolve. Go on LinkedIn, you know, tailor your resume and your LinkedIn profile to like the direction you want to go. Or if you just want to be found out, you know, and be elevated in your position, you know, look up those type of roles. But, you know, look up job titles, profiles, you know, model people's formats, their profiles, keywords. That's a big thing in LinkedIn and resumes. You probably know this. If you apply to a medium-sized or large company, or even on LinkedIn, they're going to screen out probably 90% of the resumes and LinkedIn profiles based upon like, they look for about 10 or 15 keywords in your resume or LinkedIn profile. And if you don't have them all, you get pushed aside. So model your resume, model your LinkedIn profile to any position you're applying to. And if you want to be discovered by recruiters, I'm trying to think, I had one thought around that. And I don't know, are all of you on LinkedIn? Okay. And are most of you looking for a new career or job or not, or most people are good, or? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, always go for it. But I think it's like, I'll say, like if a job description says we're looking for somebody who's knowledgeable on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn. A lot of people just have, I'm strong in social media on their resume, but they don't write like they know Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook. You know what I mean? Like use the keyword, like try to have it reflect back to what you're applying for. I mean, you don't have to lie. You know, if you've never done that, don't say, of course, but it's just use the language, use the wording as much as possible. Yeah, very specific. Yes, yes, and yeah, and you know, use the acronym and spell out things. Like a lot of people will say like CPG, consumer packaged goods, like have CPG and write out consumer packaged goods, because depending on the company that you're applying to, or a recruiter like me, I go in and do searches every day and I look for people and I'll do a search that says CPG and consumer packaged goods, because some profiles come up with one, some on another, but you just want to like cover all your bases, if that makes sense. Any other questions? I mean, mine's pretty like simple, standard stuff, but and maybe you know all this, but I'm always shocked at how many people do not have a well-developed LinkedIn profile, not a well-developed resume. You know, spend time on it, and you know, look up ones that are really aspirational. And you, like Katie was saying too, everyone here, you've done more than you realize, you've achieved more than you realize, and like think through every little thing, like every volunteer opportunity, travel, like whatever it may be, service work, etc. So, you got a question? Yes, I would say be as specific as possible, because again, it's you want to prevent the hiring manager or the recruiter from like figuring out who you are. So if you can do that, that's better. And then like I'm like, okay, she's a writer, boom, done. Whereas like if someone's like highly professional, like, you know, I'm like, where do they fit? What are they? So I would say try to do a summary, but sometimes that's hard if you're trying to change careers to or evolve. But, you know, you, again, use the language and kind of like direct the reader to where you want to go. But I focus on like how many years of experience you have. Like say I have 5+ years experience in blah, blah, blah. And then give context of like, is it big companies, small companies, nonprofits? So years of experience, what kind of companies, and then like, what is it you're good at doing? And, you know, try to use like, again, like keywords like project manager, HR assistant, customer service rep, you know, whatever it is. So like someone right away can just have a really good snapshot of who you are. But again, if you're trying to get somewhere else, just try to I think it depends on the company. I mean, I think it's fun, and nowadays everything is just, the lines are so blurred. So I think if anything is fine, really, to have personal, but fundamentally at the end of the day, all any hiring manager cares about is, are you good at your job? And they want to take the least amount of risk, because every employee they hire is a risk. They want the least amount of risk possible. So that's why they always say, the greatest predictor of the future is the past. So if someone does change jobs every 5 months and we hire you, we're hoping you're not going to leave in 5 months, but you probably are. And that, you know, that's what they're trying to avoid. They're trying to just hire the least risky candidate there is. Like, so they want the one that's going to be there the longest and do the best job. So anything fundamentally that just shows you're at the core, you're good at this profession, and you're a more than anything though, I would say people look for conscientiousness and hard workers right now, especially.
Nowadays, so there's a lot of job descriptions. Oh, how are you like authentically yourself, or like, where's your personality stand out? So like, what would you say as to adding kind of those elements on your LinkedIn, or like something more specific professional? Would you say that component for like the cover letter interview?
I think I mean, I work in marketing, so it's like fun and interesting, and you know, you see everything. I think it's fine to be yourself, to be authentic. You know, and there is like blurred lines, and a lot of people like merge their social media. Like a lot of people on LinkedIn will have their Instagram, you know, their personal website link, a lot of things. So I think it's fine to be yourself and authentic and fun. And I see things like funny, fun, you know, like a geologist who wanted to become a copywriter, and he's like, I'm tired of being taken for granted or granite, you know, or like, you know, I mean, I think it's fun, especially right now. Like people are like, I want to be around somebody fun and upbeat. And so I don't know if that answers the question.
We've got a question online from Bryce. He says, is there a service/format to use that you would recommend to strengthen your resume for prospective companies?
There are professional resume writers. There's a lot of them out there. But I really think it's easy to do a LinkedIn search for like type in LinkedIn and type in like the job description or the job title that you want, and then see all the people's names that come up, and then look at their profile. And a lot of people nowadays too, they include their resume and it's embodied in their LinkedIn profile, which is really helpful for recruiters. So you can attach your resume, whether you're looking for a job or not, you just have it sitting there. So it doesn't alert your employer like, oh, I'm looking for a job. Doesn't necessarily mean that, 'cause more and more people just have them sitting in their profile. So I would just do a LinkedIn search, but you can hire a professional resume writer, but they're usually about $300 starting to like 5,000.
Is he asking more like specifically like the templates and stuff? Like I feel like maybe like would you recommend using a template or like building one from scratch?
Oh yeah, I mean, and then there's a lot of like templates you can Google and get online. But if there's like, you know, different people will have different viewpoints on what's a good resume. So some people like chronological, some people like a summary, and that's more individual preference, I think.
Okay, so I'm talking about
Yeah.
I'm asking you, I'm not looking for a job, but I don't think it's but I also
Right.
so share your LinkedIn and resume on there, but
Yes. So what you're referring to, I think, and some of you might be familiar with this, but at the beginning of the pandemic, like people would put a green ring around their face that it says open to work. And then other people put a purple ring around their face that says now hiring. And so that does alert recruiters to like, yes, I'm definitely looking. But I honestly, in 22 years, I think I've only hired 1 or 2 unemployed people ever. Like almost everyone I find, I am like aggressively seeking them out and pulling them out of another opportunity or, you know, where they currently are. And they haven't alerted me like, oh, I'm looking. I just reach out to them and say, here's my opportunity. Are you interested? And then we start talking. So you don't need to have the open to work. I just think having a great LinkedIn profile and a resume out there. Well, the resume is, you don't necessarily need to have that out there. But if you have a great LinkedIn profile, always respond to every recruiter. If you get a lot of, you know, recruiters through LinkedIn messages or even calling you, always respond because you never know. Okay, so you've been there 2 months and you get LinkedIn. I think it's good to say, you know, I just started a new position, but would love to stay in touch. You know, and I kind of, I can go back to my message and see who's responsive. And then it kind of like makes me think, oh, in a year, I'll probably try you again. So, but I would say it's good to respond, just to have the dialogue. Okay, so was the internship was 5 months? And I mean, I think that's totally fine because a lot of internships are supposed to be like a short period, and only sometimes does the company have the ability to hire somebody into a job, you know. And I think there's the understanding an internship is usually just temporary. So you can say, I was an intern and there was no opportunity to be hired full time, or I went in knowing it would be a short-term internship. And I think that's fine to say. Say that again. Very much, very much. And, you know, especially like small to medium-sized companies where that personal connection means a lot, where like I graduated from St. Olaf College. So a St. Olaf graduate will, who said that? Where'd that come from? So someone will say, I'm a recent graduate from St. Olaf College, and would you be willing to spend 30 minutes with me talking about careers? Or, you know, people like in a small to medium sized company, if they get a message from a younger person or, you know, earlier in their career and say, I'm really interested in your company. I'm really passionate about learning more about your business. Would you be willing to talk with me over the phone? I think that really goes a long way. So the personal, but you know, at United Health Group or General Mills, you know, somewhat, but maybe not as personally because it's so big.
Something that I'm thinking about too, as you're talking about this, like, I think if you're concerned about internships and how that might look, there's really not one or two of them still people. If you feel like instead of still higher that, I think it's reaching out to students. In some of the research that I've done, they say like try to identify the least own challenge that the company's having, and you might be able to help solve. Show that you don't need to company with a few points, and I think that'll kind of.
Thank you. That's the biggest, and kind of dovetailing off of that, the resumes and LinkedIn profiles that really stand out are the ones like someone can say, I'm a barista at Starbucks. But if you say instead, serve more than 600 employees daily, you know, I'm the fastest employee, I won employee of the month. We're one of the top 10 busiest Starbucks in the Twin Cities. You know, I was promoted based upon my work ethic and professionalism. I'm like, I get the context of like who this person is and like what they can accomplish and what they're achieving. You know, it's not as interesting. It's just like, I'm a barista at Starbucks. It's like, tell me the story. And then before we introduce Mary Welsh, who I know, and I mentioned United Health Group earlier, so I'm like, sorry, Mary. But Mary, she's really interesting. She was in the CIA after college. She went to St. Olaf and she was stationed in Europe as a CIA agent, and then moved back to the United States and started her career in corporate security, like cybersecurity, biohazard security. I mean, just all corporate security. So she's the senior vice president of cybersecurity or security, not cyber, sorry, security at United Health Group, and she's on many boards. So she's a fantastic person in terms of goal setting and career. And I'm not introducing her yet, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know how much you know, Lauren, about her, but anyway, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
I think Elizabeth gave the intro. Mary is
Superstar. Okay.
So yeah.
Never yet. Because we need to turn that off so it doesn't echo. No, we need to turn that off so it doesn't echo. Okay.
Can I hang up on that?
Yeah.
Okay, am I on?
All right, Mary, we got you. You're ready to go. Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, Lana, so I need you to turn off your screen so I can share my screen.
I got you.
Got it. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and you can tell me when you can see it. And can you guys see my face? Can you guys see my face?
Yes, we can see your screen and
good.
your face and hear you perfectly.
Okay, good. Well, I'm so sorry I can't be there today. I am the story of everyone's life right now, but I've had a near exposure to COVID, and I just was informed today. So I was completely planning to come down there. I was actually super excited because I haven't been at a live event in well, over a year. So I'm so sorry I can't be there, but I really enjoyed. So I wanted to say thank you for having me today. Elizabeth mentioned that she and I know each other. I enjoyed listening to Katie as well as Elizabeth, and I hope I can spend the next, I guess I have about 30 minutes. So I'm just going to zip through some slides. This is really a conversation. I'm happy to answer any questions about my current job. Oftentimes I get most questions about my previous job, as Elizabeth had alluded to, but we can take those as it goes. So with that, I'm going to just go through my introduction. And this is a really kind of, I'm also an Oli, as you heard, and I don't know if there's any other Olis in the room, but if there are, other than Elizabeth. But this is my introduction. So this is kind of the path that I thought I was going to take. So I'm Korean by birth, and I was adopted, and I came to Minnesota when I was very young. And I grew up in Minnesota. I grew up in which is a whole different story, right? I grew up in this multicultural family. I had a Norwegian name. My parents were Norwegian. And then of course I went to a Norwegian college. And when I went to college, I was really interested in two things. I was pre-med, so I wanted to obviously go to medical school, and I wanted to explore the world. And I thought there were two, and that was really part of my story, was that I had an early exposure to overseas. So I had gone overseas as an exchange student in high school, and I'd really expanded my knowledge about what the world looked like. So I really thought I was going to, have a family, and then we were going to move around the world. So that was what I thought I was going to do. But this is the path that I actually took. And I think it's interesting because you can see a very linear path when you're setting out your goals and your future, especially when you are in college. But then certain life events happen along the way. And you can see here, there is no straight path. And the path I took, certainly I never thought I was going to join the CIA. It is something that I'll explain kind of how I got to that pathway. But there are three landmark events that happened in my life. The first is that I got married, and I happened to marry somebody I met in the 5th grade, which I'm not advocating that my daughter, when she was in the 5th grade, I told her, I met your dad in the 5th grade, and she got really nervous. And I said, I happened to meet my husband. We moved to Washington, D.C. And because I had that healthcare background, I really wanted to do something in healthcare. And I had deferred medical school because I really wanted to go to Washington with the love of my life. And we're still married. We're going to be celebrating 25 years soon. So that's pretty exciting for me. So I went into nonprofit work, and then I went into pharmaceuticals. But the pathway to the agency is that my husband was also in the agency. And just if somebody has a question, I can't see you. So you just have to kind of shout out. But he was in the agency, and the agency is a lot like it's not everything you see on TV, but you don't know a lot about, even my husband, when he joined first. And so he was informed, but not really. Once you get in, you kind of learn a little bit more about it. But when I learned more about kind of what the life of an agency officer was, I knew we were going to be living overseas. I knew it was going to be really hard for me to have a career in healthcare when I'm living in different countries. I really thought, well, you know what? I think I can do this. Why not? It sounds like a really interesting career path. And within the agency, there's many different career paths, and I won't go into all of the details. But I was in the operations side, which is the smallest directorate, and it is the one that you typically would see in the news. You are the spies. You're kind of out, meeting with assets. You're under different covers internationally. And so, early 20s, it's such an amazing experience. We lived in Vienna, Austria, Belgium, and then Pakistan. And so in between Austria and Belgium, 9/11 hit. And so when that occurred, the agency really changed its direction, actually, from being more traditional sort of clandestine operations to really counterterrorism operations. And sort of the agency that you see today is really kind of truly a result of 9/11. So we spent all this time overseas, had an amazing tour overseas, but I had this desire to wanting to come back to Minnesota. And for those of you who were raised in Minnesota, maybe many of you left Minnesota, but I have found that a lot of people who leave come back to Minnesota. And I am the product of that because I have seen a lot of the world, and I think Minnesota is an amazing place to live. Not only just because it's a safe place to live, culturally, I have family, friends, but it's just a great environment. Of course, other than the cold, but so I moved back to Minnesota, and I then went and I worked on the JTTF, and the Joint Terrorism Task Force it was a task force set up after 9/11, where then President Bush set up an information sharing team, a task force where you would share intelligence, mostly between the FBI, the CIA, and there were also other agencies who are part of this task force. And when I was in Minnesota, I got pregnant with my daughter. And when she was born, it became very evident. So I have those 3 red boxes because those are the 3 transformational events that happened in my life that really transformed my career path. And when she was born, it was clear that we wanted to stay in Minnesota. The agency just wasn't, we had to move every couple of years. At the time that she was born, we were slotted to go to Egypt. And we said, you know what? Let's just leave. Let's figure out how we can stay in Minnesota. Everything we need is here. We want to give her a normal life. And so I left the government and I went to St. Jude Medical, where I headed up their corporate security program. And from there, I went to United Health Group. So this is just a really broad overview of my career path. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This is actually a corporate slide that I show to people internally, but some of you might be wondering what in the world is corporate security. And I don't know if anyone here is at United, but if you are, hopefully you've seen my face on some training you take. But United is a big company. We are the largest public company in Minnesota, the 5th on the Fortune 500. So it's a large company, $280 billion revenue, 330,000 employees. So it can become incredibly overwhelming. And there's some pros and cons that I'll talk about later about working for such a large company. But when it comes to corporate security, most sort of larger companies have a function like mine that are, they may call it something else. But I have 4 primary pillars. I think about the people of our organization, everything from, our threats of violence in the workplace to our training, to our awareness. I manage all of our facility security. So everything, when you go into a building, you swipe your badge and everything that goes with it, that's sort of my team. How do we help and support our employees 24/7? And I would say that the pandemic has really hit, the pandemic has hit on almost all of these different buckets. And I can explain that if there's interest at the end. And investigations, we manage all of our internal investigations for our employees. And so, we can be the, oftentimes people need our assistance and they want to work with us, or they call us when they need help. But unfortunately, with an investigation, it's not always the best conversation to have if corporate security is calling you, if you're under investigation. So that's it at a very high level. But I was asked, so I just thought I'd just give you some context of kind of how I see the professional lens at work. And I thought I'd just start out with some professional pillars. And these are 5 of the pillars or areas that, that I think about. And what I wanted to share with you is that I think these are applicable not only in your kind of day-to-day sort of here's how I think about my career, but really going back to what both Katie and Elizabeth said is that you can apply these pillars to kind of anything else in your life. And going back to what Katie said, having a plan is probably the most important thing. So whether it's a professional plan, it could be a personal plan of what you want to accomplish in your personal life. And it could be even a plan, it could be a mini plan, meaning that it may not be that, hey, I want to be the SVP of some company. It might be, I have a meeting in 2 weeks and I need this outcome of that meeting. And so in order to get to that outcome, I need to have a plan of what I need to accomplish to get that outcome of the meeting. And I think it's a really important thing. I'm going to I use the term bookends a lot, because with a plan, you always need to know kind of
what are you trying to, what's your story around your plan? So if you have a plan and you're trying to get an outcome at a meeting, you need to have a really good idea of how you're going to deliver this story. And the storytelling skill set, and it doesn't matter in my mind, security, people think, you know, guns, guards, and locks. No, you know, it doesn't matter which, you know, discipline you're in, you have to know how to deliver your story. And I would say, when I look at my team, and I have a very senior level group of people who work for me, that is the number one that's the number one feedback that I have for my leadership team, is their challenge in being able to deliver a crisp story. So I'll kind of explain that later. Now, when you have a plan, you have to know where you're going. And in order to do that, sometimes it's good to know who within your network is going to help you influence your outcome. Now, it might be that you're in a new job, or you see a job that you want, and you can, like what Elizabeth said, you can apply for the job, keep your LinkedIn profile, have your resume. But, and I'm not a professional recruiter, but I would say more often than not, most of the people who come to my desk for review are generally people who have somehow found a way to network their way, you know, to kind of get their name across my desk, whether it's through an informational interview, through a phone call, through an email, or through even in the app, you know, in the interview process. So the ability to expand your network means that everyone in the room today probably has someone, you know, who may be able to expand your network. Because I constantly am telling my team as well that if you, not only do you have to know your own discipline, but you should always be curious enough to know what other people in your company are doing. And as a manager, I find it incredibly rewarding when I see an employee of mine who is able to expand their network and even get a job outside of my company or outside of my area of responsibility, because that means I've done a good job as a manager, helping them get prepared for that next step. Because a lot of people come to me and they want to say, well, I was nervous to tell you because I didn't think how you'd respond. And quite frankly, if you have if I have a talented professional on my team, and I know that they are able to go to that next assignment or that next job that's going to give them that professional growth, I am going to be incredibly excited, because I can then recruit in somebody else and nurture them to that next step. Because that, as a manager, that's what fills my cup, is to see that professional growth. So expanding your network is important, internally, externally, recruiting your allies. So you have to know kind of within your environment. So you may want to have an outcome, you have your network, but you want to know kind of who can help support your position or your outcome before you actually have that meeting. So I'll give you an example. You know, when I first started at United, huge company, there are people who have been there for 10 years, 20 years. There are people, and I was the first, very new role. And I had a very sticky situation that I needed. It was sort of a controversial sort of governance thing where I needed to come in and make a recommendation. And I knew that I was going to try to make a business case to take over another department, if you will. And I knew the person who managed that department was not going to be happy about that recommendation. So I knew that I had to come in and I had to understand what motivated that individual, and that kind of ties to the next thing. What motivated that individual to be successful, and who had the most influence over that individual? Because if I went head to head with that individual, because of his seniority, he was much more senior than I was, because of his tenure at the company, I believe that the outcome would not have been in my favor. But what I did is I went in and I said, okay, and this is a little bit of the agency coming out on me, is who can I look around that individual who can help advocate for the position that I want, whatever it is, and how do I get them to see it from my viewpoint? So when I go meet with this individual, who I think it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, I can say, I've already spoken to X, Y, and Z, these individuals, and they all agree that this is a good idea. So that's an example of how you can recruit your allies, and they don't have to be, and it can be professional and personal allies as well. The audience piece, incredibly important. And I kind of put that with the same crisp story. you may have two different audiences and your story might be slightly different, and you might have the same kind of recommendation, but 100% know your audience. I often will give feedback too, and I try to, if anyone of you will ever meet anyone on my team, they will say, Mary is the most particular person when it comes to a PowerPoint. And I don't take that as a compliment, actually, because I actually feel like they've missed the mark, meaning that I don't care. I mean, I say I don't care. I try to advocate that it is the 90% that makes a difference. And it's the 10%, the fonts, the coloring, the graphics, whatever that is. But if you don't have your 90% spot on, then your story is not going to be crisp. And if your story is not crisp and it's not tailored to your audience, it doesn't matter how pretty your PowerPoint is. Your story is the most important thing. And so I've actually tried very hard, because I've received constructive feedback from my own team, because there's a lot of energy that goes into these presentations, because I personally tell my story through a PowerPoint. That's just how I do it. And that's kind of how United does it. Every company might be different. And so I've actually moved away from PowerPoint, because even though it's how I tell my story, but I've realized that it's actually a detriment to my team, because they take so much time trying to create the perfect PowerPoint. They actually forget to tell the story. So now we've moved to just Word documents. And then once we get the story figured out, then they go back and they create the slides off the story. So it's just a little bit of an adjustment. But it doesn't matter if your story's not there, you're not going to be able to deliver your message to your audience. So those are my professional pillars. And then just the last thing, it's really important. And, I think both Katie and Elizabeth said this too. Shape yourself to the things that you love. And so find the things that fill your cup. I'm giving you some examples of things that fill my cup. And everyone, whenever I talk about this, it is important that there are things that require you to have this ability to fill your cup. You have to know what you enjoy. You have to have the time. And I think a lot of people will say, well, I don't have time, Mary. I don't even have time to get everything done. And I think there's always balance. You have to prioritize. You might have, personal issues that are taking up all of your extra time at home, or you might have some other kind of business interests that you have. But these are the things that I continually enjoy. And the list is never going to be the same for everyone. But I do encourage you to think about what makes you what gives you that pleasure, that passion throughout the week to make you kind of productive. And I'm giving you examples of what I do. So I believe very strongly in supporting girls to reach their full potential. And I think part of that has to do with just as a women leader in business, and also because I have a teenage daughter, it is important to me that I can be a role model for my daughter so she can reach her full potential. So I have aligned myself with organizations that I believe in that are doing a similar mission. And for me, that's the Girl Scouts of America. And I've recently launched a business called Anico, which is about supporting women and girls. And so that is something that to me is, and I spend my free time networking, finding internal projects that kind of hit on that, because when you enjoy it, it doesn't feel like work. The second thing is advocating for women in business and security. So part of that is because women in security in my role, I'm happy to say United Health Group is the largest company in the world to have a female in my role. And I'm very proud of that. And I'd say only in the last couple of years have I really kind of grown into those shoes of feeling like I can be a voice for women, at least in this industry for security, to really be a role model, potentially, hopefully, so they can see that there is a pathway for this profession that's really severely underrepresented by women. And so because of that, I'm in different groups that support women in business. And one is the Women's Health Leadership Trust. I'm on the board of the trust. I'm on the board of Modern Well. And then OSAC is it's with the Department of State. It's for the Overseas Security Advisory Council. And then cooking, I have a passion just for cooking. I have a lot of projects that are around cooking. I started a project maybe 15 years ago. It has never come to fruition, but someday when I retire, hopefully I can have more time to do it. But I continue to pick away at it because it's important to me and it makes me happy. And so when I think about filling your cup, I tell people to take a half an hour a week, 30 minutes a week, and it can be any time. I'm a late night owl, so I spend my nights, like my late nights, thinking about my other things outside of work and family. But take 30 minutes to think about kind of what would be, what's your passion, and it doesn't have to be financially, it doesn't have to be professional, it could be personal. And then try to find a way to work that into your week. And maybe it's a lunch, maybe it's a phone call, maybe it's a book or a podcast. But I do think that taking that time, and I think Katie said this too, you do it and it becomes part of your routine, you kind of forget about it. So that was a really, really quick overview. I'm going to pause there to see if there's any questions. I'm happy to talk about any of my professional pillars, any of the projects, boards, and even my time at the agency. So I'll pause there. Are there any questions?
1 second, Mary, we have a question. Go ahead.
So my question is, what can I do for travel, but I can't afford it? What can you do?
So the question, Mary, is what can she do if she wants to travel right now, like professionally?
Yes.
Professionally, kind of career track or jobs. If she can't afford it, what are some jobs out there that are offering that option?
Let's see here. It's interesting because I just had another friend of mine actually was looking at that. So first of all, for travel, I don't think I can, and I might ask, Elizabeth, if you're on the call still or there in the room, I might actually ask you to see, you probably have a better lens on this than I do. I would say just from a corporate perspective, the tradition from, just with COVID and just how big companies are thinking about travel, the traditional viewpoint of travel being aligned with business needs and requirements, I think has shifted dramatically within corporate America. And that, so the kind of, I'm going to go to a company and I'm going to be traveling all the time, unless you're maybe in sales or maybe, it depends if it's global company. I would say that it's changed a lot from what I've seen in the last 2 years. Okay, so that's the first thing. But I would say that larger companies do offer, and you don't have to be in a travel industry. You don't have to work at Delta. You don't have to work at a hotel. I think that depending on the company, those that have more of a global presence, I think is really important. And depends on, again, was it international or domestic travel that you were interested in?
International.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, I would focus on companies that have a global presence. That's one way of kind of winding it down, because a lot of global companies, once they do go to resume to travel, there's going to be key functional areas that actually do need to resume that travel. So a global company will be the first. Second thing is within that global company, looking at groups that actually have a global focus. So a lot of groups might have an international business group, or if you've done the research on the company like 3M, a lot of their business groups, you can research kind of where their manufacturing facilities are. And so groups that travel within companies like that, if you're in IT, for instance, what is your professional track?
Political science.
Okay. Oh, well, poli-sci. Well, so there's the company and those with poli-sci backgrounds, and you don't have to be poli-sci, but the government is also one area. Obviously, that's how I got my international experience. There's a lot of different opportunities, mostly through like the Department of State, CIA. There's actually probably 20 dozen agencies, 20 some agencies that actually have a global international presence. So federal government is one. On the company side, though, with poli-sci, which is actually going back to Elizabeth's point, would I look at poli-sci and say, oh, I'm going to hire that person because they have a poli-sci background? Even if I weren't in security, it's really about those applicable skills. And so you'd really have to see kind of how does that apply to what you're doing today. Maybe you can get some volunteer work that would give you some global exposure. Now, again, maybe not travel, but that aptitude and understanding that the world is a larger place, I think is really important. So there's a lot of volunteer opportunities that you could probably do within a company. Marketing groups travel internationally. There's a lot of, you can be in, sales is one, but anything that has sort of kind of operations that have direct manufacturing or direct presence in outside the US, I think would be good areas to start with. I don't know if that helped you.
Yeah.
Great answer, Mary. Very thorough. And then you said, and I think translation firms and global expatriate firms, and Minneapolis has a lot of those kinds of opportunities, which you and I could talk about that after the meeting. But because we have so many Fortune 500 companies here, we do have a lot of like expat firms or trailing spouse kind of firms and that kind of thing that are, allow for a global perspective. So, are there more questions coming in?
Anyone else have questions? Yeah.
A reminder of how often she does that 30 minutes. Is it 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes a week? And then
Could someone repeat the question? I can't hear.
Yep. So Mary, when you were speaking to the 30 minutes that you take to kind of reflect on what, personally brings you happiness and what your passions are, is that a weekly occurrence, a daily occurrence, or how often are you taking that 30 minutes?
So I recommend for others to start with 30 minutes a week. I do try, it depends on the day. I do try to spend 30 minutes on one of my projects that I'm passionate about, 30 minutes a day. Some days I don't do it. It's kind of like working out. Some days you do it, some days you don't. But yeah, it's about being intentional about taking time. And then with that time, if you don't know what that is, spend your time thinking about what that would be.
Well, Mary, there's no more questions. So thank you so much for joining us virtually.
It was outstanding, Mary. So
Great.
inspiring.
And I'll put my contact information in the chat, and anyone who wants to have a virtual coffee with me, or when I come out of quarantine, we can meet in person. I'm always happy to do that. I believe very strongly in the art of networking, and if I can be helpful to anyone in this group, I am offering to do that, and I would gladly do that.
Thank you so much, Mary. That's awesome.
Mary. Nice to see your smiling face. There's a round of applause over here. I don't know if you can hear that, Mary.
Thank you.